Lars is a character in Tekken 8 that excels at excellent punishment, high damage in combos, risky but high damage in lows, really good wall carry, and very scary stance mix-ups as well. Hey guys, GamerNemy, and today I'm gonna give you guys Lars' most important tools, how to use them, in what scenarios you want to use these tools, as well as some good tips and tricks revolving around these particular tools. So without further ado, get comfortable because it's gonna be a long one. Let's get right into it. Okay, so firstly let's talk about Lars' 2-1, which is his 10 frame punisher. Now despite being a 10 frame punisher, this move is actually a very good utility as a poke or a check, as we'll talk about later. So the move is -8 on block, so it's safe. So for those of you that don't understand frame data, as usual, the move is safe but not to a point that you can press buttons after. You are more advised to just block after throwing out this move. And the little spin animation as well basically makes the move -9, so you just have to block when you land this move on block. It is +8 on hit, however, and this is what makes this move very strong to just throw out. And it also takes Lars into limited entry stance, which we'll talk about later in the video. So just a brief explanation on limited entry. It has two moves off in this stance. It has a 1, which is a low, and it has the 2, which is a mid. Both of these have very good tracking, which makes it a very strong stance for mix-up. So 2-1 takes you into this stance at +8, and both of those moves come out at 16 frames, right? So the guaranteed mix-up when you land 2-1 on hit. That's what makes this string very scary to just throw out, right? It's a very good check. And the other thing is it's a high mid string. Most high mid strings in this game are very difficult to deal with because as good as you duck the first hit, the second hit will clip you because it's a mid. So think of Jin 2-1, for example. Jin 2-1 is very difficult to deal with. Think of Jack 2-1 as well, very difficult to deal with. Horang 4-3, although a bit weaker than the rest, but it's still the same. As much as you duck the first hit, the second hit being a mid will mess you up. So it's a very good check to just throw out. Your opponent is in your face, boom, throw out a 2-1. You land it on block, you're advised to just block, right? Because -9 or -8, the best case scenario is you blocking. If you try to mash after this, you're at risk of getting launched. You're at risk of getting counter hit. So you want to land this move on hit, because on hit, again, will take you into LE, which is this limited entry stance that has two follow-ups, a low or a mid. So you put your opponent into a guessing game. It's either they duck or they don't. So that's what makes 2-1 a very good check, right? And you don't really have to commit to the LE mix-ups, limited entry between the mid and the low. If you want, you can cancel out of LE, right? You can do stuff like a full crouch low, you can do cancel into grab, you can do cancel into orbital. Again, I will have a section for the LE stance, so please stay tuned for that. So that's what makes 2-1 really strong. So think of Jin 2-1, think of Jack 2-1, think of Horang 4-3. As good as those moves are, you really use Lars' 2-1 in the same sense. The only difference is Lars' 2-1 takes you into stance for a guaranteed 50-50 on hit. So use your 2-1 both offensively and defensively if your opponent is in your face, or you just want to check them with a 10 frame string, which is of course is the fastest in the game. Now let's talk about Lars' legendary 1-1-1, which is a 10 frame counter hit confirmable string that takes you into hit. This move is Lars' go-to when it comes to keep out. This move will save your life. I advise you to really try your best to utilize this too. Lars is not a defensive character. He does not really have that good of many of keep out tools, so 1-1-1 is something you're going to rely on a lot alongside another tool which we'll talk about later on in the video. So it's only -12 on block, which is really good. A bar from Tekken 7 where it was like -14, so you could get launched by like Brian and many other characters that had 14 frame launcher. So at -12, honestly, that's a really good buff, considering the fact that it takes you into hit for a mix-up. That is very strong. The only other character in the game that has this is Law, and Lars is actually better than Lars because Lars is a launcher in hit. Okay, so back in my Leroy guide, there was someone that commented that said they didn't understand what counter hit confirmable meant. So what this means is you can visually see if the first 2 hits or even the first hit lands on counter hit, then you can continue the string. So you can just buffer like 1-1, right? 1-1, 1-1. Then you can visually see, you can see and feel if the opponent was mashing buttons, right? Sometimes you're just able to tell. The more you use it, the more you get familiar with the move, the more you'll be able to land this consistently on counter. You can visually see if the opponent is in the middle of an animation or like they pressed something, then do the whole string to get the counter hit confirmed. So that's what it means by counter hit confirmable. These are very strong tools in Tekken in general, right? So having this at a 10 frame startup. So 10 frame, again, for those of you that don't understand frame data, is the fastest speed or the fastest move in the game. Fastest moves in the game come out at 10 frames, which are jabs, right? So this is basically a jab, a 10 frame jab that you can hit. You can counter it, confirm, and take you into hit. So yeah, 1-1 is a very strong tool, guys. You must utilize this move as much as possible. Like I said earlier, Lars defensively is not that great, so this tool really carries him a lot, right? And so being 10 frames, that makes Lars's jab game very, very strong as well, because a jab, remember guys, a jab is +1, right? So +1 puts you at an advantage, and 1-1-1 comes out at 10 frames. So if a one jab is +1, that means one jab into 1-1-1 is a frame trap. So for beginners or intermediate players, again, if I do one jab on block, then I do 1-1-1, right? If the opponent presses any buttons after my one jab, they will lose to my 1-1-1 because I have an advantage because I am +1, right? So this makes Lars's jab game very, very scary. His pressure game is very, very scary. So there are many frame traps you can do with 1-on-1, but you won't really use it as much as like you use most counter hit tools in terms of frame traps, because like I said, it comes out at the speed of a jab. So mostly you just use it defensively as a keep out. Offensively, you can like buffer 1-on, right, 1-1 and see if they are mashing buttons, because some people just tend to press buttons when you do 1-1 expecting the third hit. So it gives you like mental frame traps or like mental mix of just 1-1, they're not pressing buttons, okay, 1-1 again, 1-1, 1-1 again, or 1-1, they're still pressing buttons, you can go low, right? 1-1, you can go orbital, 1-1 grab, stuff like that. 1-1, if you see they're pressing buttons after 1-1, that means you start blocking now, right? You start blocking because 1-1 on its own, you lose your turn basically, right? So you want to block afterwards generally. He does have other frame traps as well, not very strong, but he does have stuff like dynamic entry 1, which is his dash forward elbow. It's +1 as well, so you use it the same way as you use one jab into 1-1-1. Running 3, of course, is plus. You can do like running 3 into 1-1-1. Down 2 is 0 on block, so you can do like down 2 into 1-1-1. Of course, it leaves them into crouch, so if they do press any buttons they are standing for, they will lose to your 1-1-1. Very strong frame trap. Silent entry 3+4 is also 0 on block, just like down 2. Use it in the same sense, so it leaves them in crouch. The deal standing for, they will lose to your 1-on-1 as well. So like mostly it should be used defensively. Your opponent is in your face, buffer the 1-1, see if it lands on counter hit, then finish the whole string to take you into hit. 1-1 offensively, if they're not pressing any buttons after, that gives you like free mental frame traps, free mental pressure. You can keep going with your offense, so like a 1-1 again, like I said earlier, into like a low or into like a grab, right? So it all depends on the reads. Sometimes machine 1-1 will get you killed. This is taken after all, it can be stepped, right? You can get counter hit if you're not careful, so it mostly depends on your reads. But overall, those are some of the case scenarios you want to use 1-1. A very, very strong keep out tool, very, very strong offensive tool as well. Lars' down forward tool is another of his quick counter hit tools that you should be using in your gameplay as well. So the down forward tool can take you into silent entry automatically. However, you can hold back to not go into stance. So if you do decide to hold back and not go into stance, it's only -11. However, if you go into stance on block, it's actually launch punishable if the opponent expects it. There's like a mix-up situation that goes on with this tool that we're going to talk about. Also, firstly, it gives you a counter hit knockdown that you can follow up with a forward tool or a dash up elbow for some good damage, for at least 40 damage maximum. So the thing about this move is, like I said, it's 11 on block, -11. However, if the opponent decides to jab and you decide to go into stance, the stance will go under the jabs, right? So it becomes like a mix-up situation. Opponents have to start doing mids instead of a punish. So if you do like down forward 2 into stance and they throw out a down forward 1, it will clip you. If you do the same thing and they go for a hop kick or like a launcher down forward 2, it will clip you. However, if you just do down forward 2 on its own and not go into stance, they actually have to throw out jabs to punish it. They can't punish it in any other way except for jab punishment. So it's a very, very strong mind game. Honestly, I don't think it's actually a bad move. People don't really use down forward 2 that much, but if you watched people like Lars and Nobi, they use the hell out of this move because it's just that good. It's a very, very strong mix-up situation. And as you can see here, if you do down forward 2 into silent entry 2, which is a law that launches on counter hit, if they throw out 2 jabs, right, let's say like a Mishima tries to punish your down forward 2 with a 1-1-2, if you go into stance and go right under those jabs, if they mash jabs like the 1-1, they will get counter hit launched, right? So it's a very, very strong mix-up situation because it puts your opponent at risk as well if they make a wrong read. It also puts you at risk as well if you try to go into stance and the opponent knows this and they launch you for it like a down forward 1 or like a hop kick and all that jazz. But overall, I think the reward is worth the risk. Most of the time, even just a down forward 2 into cancel, you will get away with doing this move most of the times. But again guys, it all depends on the reads. I stress this in all my guides. As much as I give you these tips and tricks, not all of these will work, right? If you're making wrong reads, like you have to see what your opponent is doing. You throw out a down forward 2 and you just block, right? What are they doing? Are they punishing it? Are they throwing out jabs afterwards, right? Are they doing hop kicks when you throw it down forward 2, expecting you to go into stance, right? Stuff like this. You as a player have to make the reads. That's what makes this move very, very strong. You make right reads, you get the most out of this move. You make wrong reads, you're putting yourself at risk because again, in stance, it can get launched. So big a counter hit too. Of course, we do have to have some good frame traps, but Lars is not a heavily plus character. Most of the stuff he has in plus usually force him into stance, like DE3 for example. So you don't really have like strong setups for down forward 2 for frame traps. You can do like running 3 on block, into down forward 2, basic stuff because it's, you know, a running slash kick, so it's like super plus, so down forward 2 becomes a frame trap. And most of his other stuff are just on hit, like a down back to 1 for example, on hit into down forward 2 is a frame trap. But overall, you just use it as a keep out tool, right? Check them. If they're pressing buttons, if they're too aggressive in your face, you have 1-1-1. You have 2-1, and now you also have down forward 2, which is a very, very strong tool. So please guys, use your down forward 2s and again, make the right reads. Down back to 1 is another of Lars' decent mid pokes. We spoke about earlier about how Lars is a very risky character when it comes to his lows in neutral. Everything is launch punishable when it comes to his lows. So for that, he was given some really good mids to make up for it. And down back to 1 is one of those decent mids. It's basically just a good safe mid poke, leaves you at -9 in your opponent's face point blank. That's the only bad thing about it, right? You lose your turn and you're like point blank range in your opponent's face, which is very, very scary. It's a situation you don't really want to be in most of the times. So you can also just do the one move that's down back to on its own and try to bait out the opponent through pressing buttons. You can also cancel into silent entry from down back 2, you press forward. So it kind of has some good set play to it and some mix up potential to it as well. But overall, it's just a very good, decent poke, right? But if you do like down back 2 on its own, you can like bait them into pressing buttons, do like down back 2 into a backdash into arc blast if they press any buttons. And sorry for my dog, guys, my dog is going crazy and for some reason it's always when I'm recording, so I apologize for my dog again, guys. So like I was saying, you can bait out your opponent by just pressing like down back on its own and mixing that up with down back to 1 or down back 2 into silent entry by holding forward. It's kind of like a mini mix up just to mess your opponent's timing, right? So it's an easy access into silent entry. However, if you do go into silent entry from down back 2 and if your opponent expects it, just like down forward 2 into SE, you can get punished, you can get launched, you can get interrupted with a down forward 1 or a hop kick and stuff like that. So be very careful, but just buffer down back 2 sometimes and see how your opponent reacts from that. Down back 2, backdash, right? Down back 2, backdash. If they press any buttons like a jab or like a down forward 2 very, very late, you can get an arc blast punish. Dojin, a Lars player from the Philippines, high competitive Lars player, is one of the best Lars players when it comes to these setups. Down back 2 setups is very, very good. So it's a mix up between down back to 1, down back 2 on its own, and down back 2 into SE. If you want to go into SE sometimes, it's good to go into SE power crash. So down back 2 into SE4 just to see what they will do if they're pressing like a down forward 1 or like a jab. But however, you must be careful. High level players can like jab you into the power crash, they notice it's a power crash, then duck the thing and launch you for that. So be very careful. But overall, down back to 1 must be used as a poke. Just a nice safe poke mix-up as a mix-up for the lows as well. It's not that great on block like I say, but it's very strong on hit, right? On hit it's like I think +6, so you have so many mix-up potential from this, right? You can go for like down back to 1 on hit into back 1, down back to 1 into back 4 as well, which is a counter hit setup. You know, down back to 1 on hit to down forward 4. You can do so much on hit. The world is your oyster. But like I said, it's just a check, a very good mid check as a mix-up for his lows as well. Sticking to the subject of very strong mids, down 2 is another of Lars' amazing tools. It leaves your opponent at 0 on block in a crouching state. So 0 on block basically means it resets the neutral. Whatever you guys do after this, you will trade. However, there is quite an advantage towards Lars' side, because Lars has the choice to either stay standing after doing down 2 or going into crouch after doing down 2. So like I said, it's neutral on block, or rather 0 on block. So let's say Lars, the last player, does down 2 and go into crouch. If the opponent does all standing 4 and I do the same thing, you will trade because it's 0 on block. All standing 4 comes out at the same speed, so you will trade. However, if I stay standing after doing down 2 and they do all standing 4 after my down 2, if I jab afterwards, my jabs will beat their all standing 4, because all standing 4 comes out at 11 frames and the jab comes out at 10 frames. So the jab is faster than all standing 4, so I will win. So like I said, it's quite an advantage towards Lars' side, because he can decide to stay into crouch or stay standing. So you can play around this in so many different ways. Okay, so do you want to stay standing or do you want to go into full crouch after doing down 2? Well, either of them is fine. So first, let's talk about staying standing after down 2. We spoke about 1-1-1 earlier and how it's a very good frame trap after down 2. So down 2 on block into 1-1-1 is a frame trap. If they do all standing 4 or any other all standing move that doesn't go under highs, you should be able to win that setup or win that trade. However, keep in mind it can be stepped, so in everything in Tekken that can be tracked, you'll be stepped, so keep that in mind. Down 2 into stay standing is really good for bait as well. So you can do stuff like down 2 into backdash. If you do down 2 at the max range, if the opponent does all standing 4, right, you can just backdash and arc blast, backdash into punish, or just backdash into punish. One of the strongest things about down 2, guys, just bow down 2 then backdash, simply down 2 and backdash, or down 2 or sidestep depending on the range or the distance. These are the two most important reasons as to why you want to stay standing into down 2. So these are all setups on block. Remember, it's 0 on block. You can easily just move afterwards. So you want to see what your opponent does after you throw out this down 2 on block. I'll stress myself again, it's all about reads. What is your opponent doing after you throw out certain moves? That's how Tekken is. It's about studying your opponent, just like a down forward 1, sorry. You study your opponent's tendencies after you throw out certain moves. What are they doing after down 2, right? Then you make your reads off of that. Now, if you want to go into crouch, right? Sometimes if you do down 2, your opponent will just respect it, right? Because you don't want to press buttons randomly sometimes, because you never know what they're thinking. So opponent just tends to like just block after down 2. So if you're going to full crouch, you have access to the full crouch low, which is full crouch down back 1+2, and that's the sole purpose as to why you want to go into full crouch. So if your opponent is not pressing buttons after down 2 or showing you a lot of respect after down 2, that gives you the leeway to now go for his full crouch low. So full crouch down back 1+2. Not only that, Lars also has access to full crouch down forward 2. Now this one I'll talk about on hit and not block, because it's a frame trap on hit. Down 2 on hit is +8. So if you do down 2 into full crouch down forward 2, it is a frame trap. They press any buttons after this, they get counter hit. So again, down 2 on block, when you go into crouch, you still have access to all standing 2 as well. I'll talk about all standing 2 next after this. So basically, it has like a ton of mixes that can allow you to go into silent entry if you want, can allow you to go into LE as well, or just go for the all standing 2-1 as a mix up as well. So it gives you that luxury. If the opponent is respecting you, they are not respecting you, start baiting them into pressing buttons, start baiting them into that 1-1-1. That's the whole sole purpose about down 2. It's a very good mid for that particular purpose, baiting and very strong frame traps. And +8, like I said, on hit is a lot. It's a lot. You can like do so much with this, like down 2 on hit into back to 1, down 2 into back 1, down 2 into back 4, down 2 into down forward 2, all these are frame traps. They press buttons, they get hit by all these options. Just like basically down back to, right? You want to land down to on hit most of the times. The only difference is down to is very good on block as well, being neutral. So again, guys, use your down twos as another mid mix up for Lars is lows. People like ducking against Lars, so this is a very good mid to just throw out as well. Okay, so following up from down 2, let's talk about Lars's while standing 2. And man, I hope this section won't be too long because there's so much you can do with this mid. It's very, very strong. So Lars's while standing 2 is his 13 frame Punisher. However, you won't really be using it that much as a 13 frame Punisher, more so as you'll be using it as a poke. Of course, if something is minus 13, you are going to use this mid as a Punisher, but it's very strong as a poke as well, and let me explain why. Okay, so first there's an extension with while standing 2-2, which is mid. The second mid is unsafe at minus 12, I believe. And then it also has the high variation, which is while standing 2-3. Now the while standing 2-3, the second hit is a high, right? The whole string is safe if they don't duck it. However, it is a high, so it can be ducked and launched. Keep that in mind. And it can take you into limited entry stance if you hold down. So on hit, while standing 2-3 is guaranteed, and it leaves you a guaranteed 50-50 mix up in LE between the low and the mid. And thirdly, this move can also take you into silent entry. So you do while standing 2, then hold forward, it will take you into SE. It can also take you into dynamic entry by holding down. So while standing 2 and hold down takes you into DE. That's like a back step or like a back dash, right? So already you can tell there's a lot you can do with this string. There's so many mix-ups revolving around this, and it's just really, really good. Let's start on the first thing. The first thing about outstanding 2 is the fact that it tracks both sides. So think of outstanding 2 as a homing move. This thing has so much tracking that it even tracks characters like Lily and Alisa. So as much as it's not a sidestep like generally spin, because it doesn't really have the blue indicators that show that it's a homing move, but this thing tracks both ways, guys. 360 degrees full tracking. So already it's just strong. It's really, really strong. So Lars is one of the most linear characters in the game, so you really have to use your homing moves, right? Back 1 plus 2, and even while standing 2 as a tracking move is really, really good. Then thirdly, or rather fourthly or fifthly, it also has some crushing properties. While standing 2 does tend to go under highs, but it does have a very delayed timing at which the crushing starts. So it's something that takes practice. You can find yourself getting clipped sometimes or do while standing 2, but it's all about timing. It can go under stuff like electrics, right? It's really, really good for these matchups. Electrics, Steve jab, Steve back 1. It's really, really good for that because it does go under highs. But again, it is a timing thing. If you find yourself getting hit by highs or like getting clipped by electrics, please don't blame me. It's about timing, right? You mistime it, you get hit. It's kind of difficult to do actually, so don't really rely on it too much for going under highs in general, but it does have that high crushing property, which is actually just a bonus. While standing 2, because you also be in full crouch at Lars, remember Lars has access to that full crouch down 1 plus 2 low, right? So you can use that as a mix up for the while standing 2. While standing 2 as well is just very, very deceptive, right? You have to guess between while standing 2-1, which is a mid-mid, while standing 2-3, which is a mid-high, right? While standing 2 into SE as well. So you have to guess between him finishing the string and doing the mid, him finishing the string and doing the mid-high, or him finishing the string and going into stance, or standing 2 into stance. So like this is where the mix-up comes into play, right? If they're respecting you from doing while standing 2, that gives you like the free get in card, or standing 2 into silent entry mix-ups, right? If they are mashing a lot after while standing 2, use while standing 2 into dynamic entry. If you do while standing 2 into DE 1 plus 2, if they press any buttons, like even just a jab or like a down forward one, depending on the range, you can clip them with dynamic entry 1 plus 2. So it's a very, very strong mix up, to honestly, from full crouch. I don't understand why most Lars people don't use this move. Most high level Lars players and pro players use the hell out of while standing 2. People like Nobi, right? Kaizoku Lars, as usual, very, very strong players. They use the shit out of while standing 2 because it's very, very strong. It goes back to reads again. What is your opponent doing after while standing 2? Are they pressing buttons and after while standing 2? Well, then finish the whole string while standing 2-3. If that 3 hits, you're guaranteed a mix up in LE between the low and the mid, right? Are they ducking while standing 2-3? Mix that up with while standing 2-1, the mid, unsafe, but if they duck, they get hit, right? Or if they're still marching off outstanding 2, go into dynamic entry and clip them with outstanding, so with a DE1+2, which is an instant launcher on hit, right? And then now respecting your outstanding 2, this gives you the free leverage or the free leeway to go into SE mix-ups by holding forward after outstanding 2. So it does have that versatility, that strong mix-up potential, especially in hit, because outstanding 2 into SE is like a free entry into AoE cancel into the hit shenanigans, right? So yeah, outstanding 2 guy is a very strong mid. Please use this move. It's very versatile as a homing move, right? As a high crash as well. Mix-up potential, right? It's insane. It's one of Lars' best moves and most underrated moves. Okay, so now let's talk about forward 1+2, which is a safe mid counter hit launcher that's only -9 on block and has a ton of pushback and range. Forward 1+2 has been returned to its glory. Like, this move is really good. It is really good. It was buffed in this game. It gives you a full combo now on counter hit. In Tekken 7, it used to be an instant screw on counter hit, but now you get the full juggle off of this. Now, this move is another of Lars' moves that cover this range, right? Range 1.5, range 2. Something like DE1, his dynamic entry jab, and his DE3 as well, which we'll talk about later in the video. So it's kind of a theme with Lars. He controls this particular range. Range 1.2, range 2, Lars controls this space. He is a beast at controlling the space, and forward 1+2 does that as well. Despite being -9, it has a ton of pushback on block, so it can basically still move afterwards. If opponents get too aggressive and come in like running with like a running slash kick, they tend to do that a lot actually, right? Because of the pushback. Like this move is very annoying, right? If you keep using forward 1+2 with Lars, people just get so frustrated because of the pushback that it has, and start doing stupid things, right? Like dashing into you, running towards you with like a running 3 or like a dragon of running 2. People do that a lot, so that opens up some opportunities to like bait your opponent, right? So you can do like a forward 1+2 into a 1 jab. If you anticipate that your opponent is going to come in running at you, of course -9 is still bad. You lose your turn, you are at risk of getting launched, of getting hit, like I always say. But because of the pushback, you do have some kind of set play with this, right? If you know your opponent is coming in towards, like charging towards you after forward 1+2, throw out a 1 jab. At times, even throw out an arc blast just to catch them off guard. But this is always dependent on your reads. Like I'm always stressing in this guide, it's all about the reads. Just keep throwing those forward 1+2, eventually they'll do something stupid. Now, there isn't really like one particular way you want to use this move. It's just a counter hit feature. You just throw it out, right? It's that type of counter hit feature. So think like a Steve back 1, except it's a mid and has a lot of range, right? That's basically how you use it. It's also good to use as keep out, of course, a counter hit too, because of the pushback that it has. So if you have a life lead and you keep throwing forward 1+2s, of course, it's very good because of the pushback that it has. But you have to be worried about sidestepping, of course, like I always say, in Tekken 8 especially, sidestep is strong. So you have to mix that up with some homing moves. So I have a life lead, forward 1+2 is really good because of the pushback that it has. Another thing I really love about this move is a knockdown. It knocks down at a very range, good for dynamic entry, okay. So forward 1+2, boom, you get a knockdown on normal hit. You always want to follow up with a DE mix-up. So DE2, which we'll talk about later on in the video, hits grounded opponents and also is a counter hit mid launcher, which is safe on block as well. So you can do forward 1+2 on normal hit into DE2. This will catch everything. Get up 3, get up 4, spring kick. If they do a spring kick, you can juggle them out of it. It's really like it's a very strong setup too for Oki, right? So forward 1+2 normal hit into DE1 to hit them on the ground as well and catch those counter hit get up kicks. If they realize that, okay, this DE2 covers all the space, like it covers every option from the ground, now is your time to start going low. So you can do like forward 1+2 on hit into dynamic entry 4, which is another low from DE, we'll talk about later. You can go dynamic entry 3+4, which is another low. Forward 1+2 knockdown into DE3, right? More plus frames, Oki. Like it's so good. Lars' Okizeme is so good after this. So all these moves, guys, don't worry, we'll talk about them in the dynamic entry section. But basically, that's how you want to use this forward 1+2. as like it's very annoying, right? Just fish for that counter hit, fish for it, fish for it, fish for it. They start pressing buttons, boom, interrupt them from like coming dashing towards you with like a one jab or a YOLO arc blast at times. If you have the read on your opponent, don't just randomly throw that. At the end of the day, they can get a read on you and bait you instead. So make sure you have the read when you go for like risky options like that. On normal hit knockdown, you have some good Okizeme tools such as forward 1+2 normal hit into DE2. You can even cancel DE into SE to go for another mix-up. You can cancel DE into SE into LE for another mix-up, right? That's basically how his Okizeme works. So forward 1+2, very strong Lars 2 as well. Full crouch down forward 2 is another of Lars' strong counter hit mid tools, although this one is a little bit different from forward 1+2 because like I said, it comes from full crouch. So you won't really be using this one as a fisher in neutral like that, just randomly throw out the full crouch down forward 2. You can use it like that, but you won't really get that much mileage because it's just very weird to use, right? You go into full crouch and you throw out a counter hit fishing 2 in neutral. It takes so much time, it feels very junky, very clunky. You're better off going for like a low mix-up and like outstanding 2 mix-ups. However, where this 2 shines is from full crouch in terms of frame traps. Using full crouch down forward 2 makes your opponent respect your lows just that much. It makes your opponent respect your crouching status just that much because it's very strong. Like it's very strong in that sense, not as a neutral fishing tool, but as a frame trap setup from crouch. So something basic is classic down back 4 into full crouch down forward 2, right? Classic Lars frame trap. They press buttons, they get countered. So this will make them to stop pressing buttons and respect your frames after down back 4. So this is what I mean by it's very good in terms of frame traps from full crouch. So that's the sense in which you use full crouch down forward 2. Another example is after down 2, like we spoke about previously in the video. Down 2 on hit, right, is like +8. Then you can stay in full crouch by holding down. So it's a frame trap if you go like down 2 into full crouch down forward 2. Now sadly, Lars doesn't really have that many frame trap setups for down forward, for full crouch down forward 2. So you won't really see that many Lars players using this tool that much. Only like in very few scenarios, honestly, because like I said, it's from full crouch. That makes it very weird to use, very junky to use. But I've added it to this guide because like I said, it makes your opponent respect your frames from full crouch. Another thing you can do is like down back 1, right? Stay crouching into full crouch down forward 2. Now this is not a frame trap setup. However, because down back 1-3, people tend to wait for the second hit so that they duck it and they punish it. So you just do like down back 1 on its own into full crouch down forward 2 in case they like do something late, mash random ass buttons. Then you can just catch them off guard with a counter hit full crouch down forward 2. I'll speak about down back 1 of course in the lows video, so please, you know, stay tuned for that. So basically that's how you want to use this tool. Nothing really too complicated about it. Now let's get into some neutral lows, starting with Lars' classic down back 4, the Lars special. Every Lars player and their grandmother loves spamming the hell out of this low. Every green rank Lars player is spamming the hell out of down back 4, and I don't blame them. Down back 4 is a very strong low. There are very few characters in the game that have an unreactable, high crushing, low sweep that is a counter hit launcher, right? I think the only other character I can think of is Victor's down back 4, right? So it makes it a very strong low because it does crush highs. However, this low is the most obvious when it comes to Lars. This is the low that pro players are looking to block. High level players are looking for this low all the damn time. Additionally, it's very susceptible to sidestep right. Sidestep right is Lars' kryptonite. It can be very easily stepped, so you have to mix up that with a lot of homing moves, right? Back 1, back 1+2. The number 1 tip I can give you with down back 4 is don't be too obvious with this low, right? You don't just want to spam it because it will get obvious and you will keep on getting launched because like it's a strong low and you just want to use it all the damn time because of its properties. But like guys, if the opponent has a read on you, you get like it becomes like a very bad low, right? A very bad low. So you don't have to be very obvious with this low. What makes it good is, like I said, it goes under highs, right? So you kind of like you want to use it like a down forward 2s for, let's say, keep out. You know how Hwarang's players like spamming down forward 2s, or Raven's like spamming quarter circle forward 3+4s, or Yoshi's love spamming the breath. So you kind of use it like a zoning to, right? Mostly against characters that don't have like very good long range with punishment, like Horang back 3 for example. So you want to use it just outside of that range, right? Because most people tend to just run into it. So you're kind of using it defensively, like a zoning tool, not really offensively. Use it offensively against characters with a lot of high crush moves. Characters like Steve, a Steve player coming in with jabs, right? Throw out a down back 4. Kazuya's, Mishima's coming in with EWGF, throw out a down back 4. Again, it's all about reads. Don't just randomly throw it out. Of course, if an opponent is being aggressive, down back 4 is something you can throw out, right? But you have better options, guys. You have better other counter tools I've spoken about. 1-1-1, right? Down forward 2. Sidestepping as well. Don't just throw out random down back 4s. Like, this differentiates a very good Lars player and a very bad Lars player. Like, watch high level Lars and tell me how many times you see a pro player throw out down back 4, right? Because it's just a very risky law. It's very, very obvious. So you try by all means to be less obvious and very, very cautious and use down back 4 in a very smart way. So I spoke about like some good frame traps earlier. You can do like down back 4 into full crouch, down forward 2. We spoke about that earlier. Down back 4 into outstanding 2 mix-ups, very, very strong as well. We spoke about that earlier. If they start respecting your frames, you can now use that to like go offensively, right? Down back 4, cancel into dynamic entry, down back 4, cancel into 4-1+2, down back 4 into orbital, into grab, stuff like that. It's all about reads and making sure your opponent is respecting your frames. All about conditioning, guys. It's all about conditioning. But overall, definitely one of Lars's best tools. However, be very cautious. Forward 4-2 is another of Lars's best laws, but just like down back 4, it is launch punishable on block and very susceptible to sidestep, right? This is Lars's biggest weakness. I'm sure you guys have noticed the theme now. All of Lars, or at least 90% of Lars's laws in neutral, are all launch punishable and have really, really bad tracking towards his right side. However, this law is very, very good because it has so much range and it leaves you at +9. +9, it also leaves you in dynamic entry. So +9 in dynamic entry is just like, oh my days, it's so strong. It is so strong because remember DE, guys, he has that DE3 which is also super plus. He has DE2 which is a counter hit launcher as well. He has hella lows from DE now, DE4, DE3+4. So like the mix-up potential he has after forward 4-2 is just stupid. It is crazy. A very, very strong law despite the risks. So this law is basically just get in, right? Fuck it, I'm going in. Forward 4-2. I especially love to use this law when I'm in hit because like I said, it takes you into DE, and from DE you can do so much. You can do so much from DE. You can go like DE4 right into LE. LE has access to the enhanced low in the mid as well whilst in hit. So an easy access to LE after DE from forward 4-2. You can go forward 4-2 into DE3+4. Then go into SE, right? You hold forward, go into SE. You can even cancel SE again and go into LE for a mix-up. Like, honestly, at this point, let your imagination run wild, right? Be creative. So if you don't want them sidestepping or pressing buttons after you do forward 4-2, then DE2 is that answer for you, right? I'll talk about DE2 when I break down DE stance or dynamic entry stance. But as of right now, just know that it's a counter hit launcher at safe on block and is a mid, right? So forward 4-2 into DE2 is a classic Lars frame trap. So if they start respecting you, that means you can now start going for DE3. So like forward 4-2 into DE3, right? So you go like +9 into +5, right? So they're just guessing for their lives. The fidget spinner memes that Lars, that you guys see online on Reddit all the time, you know, Lars being a monkey character, it's because of stuff like this. Like this character will just dance in your face. Forward 4-2 into DE3, DE into SE, SE cancel into LE into low or mid, like that kind of thing. So just be creative. So if they're respecting you, like I said, from DE2, now is the opportunity to go for like more plus frames with DE3, or even go low, right, with DE3+4 or DE4. You can even cancel DE into SE and go into SE2. You can go for SE3+4 if you want, because 3+4 is 0 on block, which is a very good setup for 1-1-1, like we talked about earlier in the video. Like, just go crazy, just run wild. But like I said, guys, it is launch punishable. Despite the strength of this law in terms of frames, it is a very, very risky law. So like, pick your moments, right? Pick your moments. I especially love to use it in hit. I feel like it's very, very strong in hit And honestly, I feel as though it just depends on you as a Lars player. Is your opponent blocking these lows that much, right? Are they hesitating to block these lows? That should be the reads you should be considering when going for this low. Now, it has another version, forward for 3 as well, which does more damage. It does 5 more points of damage, however, it is -3. So unlike forward for 3, forward for 2, sorry, you won't be able to continue your pressure after forward for 3. So that's the difference between the two particular lows. So if you want 4 more points of damage, go for forward for 3. If you want frame data in Hela mix-ups, go forward 2, which I actually encourage. Not forward for 3, but forward for 2. Moving on to down back 1-3, which is going to be your go-to low. Now the whole thing is low high, so if it's ducked, it can be launched, or it's launch punishable on block if you do the full string. And just as the rest of his lows, it's also susceptible to sidestep right, so it can be punished if your opponent steps in the right direction. So sidestep right duck especially is very strong against Lars, mainly for this low. They're looking for this low. But the reason why this can be your go-to, or has to be your go-to, is the fact that you don't really have to commit to the full string all the time. You can just do down back 1 on its own. So the move is -1 on hit, both if you just do only down back 1 on its own, and the full string down back 1-3 only -1. So you don't really have much to work around this. You can still sidestep and stuff like that. You can still challenge. -1 is not that bad, right? It's almost just 1 frame from being neutral. So it's a very good low, very decent low, nothing too crazy. But like in terms of your safe lows in neutral, down back 1 is that low for you. So you can do quite a few things with this low. Of course, it also takes you into limited entry, so LE, down back 1-3, if you hold down, it takes you into LE stance. And just like 2-1, we spoke about 2-1 earlier, you can do like down back 1-3, then go into LE stance, right? If you do the 1 or the 2, both options crush jabs. So if the opponent tries to challenge you with a jab, the LE options will beat those highs. So it's kind of like a mini mix-ups he has from this. If the opponent doesn't throw out a jab, they throw out like a down forward 1 instead. You can do down back 1-3, hold down into while standing 4 to beat out any other option they do except a dick jab or a jab, right? So that's kind of like the mind games or the mix-up that goes with down back 1-3. Not a guaranteed mix-up, not a guaranteed poke, but you do have some mind games off of this. Now, like I said, to avoid being launched all the time and just mess up their timing, you can just throw down back 1 on its own, and down back 1 will take you into full crouch. And remember, Lars has some very good options in full crouch. Down back 1 into full crouch, down 1+2, his shiny shoes low. He has full crouch down forward 2, we spoke about earlier, which you can use as well, kind of like a mental frame trap. If they delay to press buttons, they can get counter hit. You can go down back 1 into outstanding 2 mix-ups, the mix-ups we spoke about earlier. So it is a very versatile low. It's a very less risky low because you can just do down back 1 on its own. But the tracking is kind of trash. Tracking is trash, range is decent, and the frames aren't all that really, you know. In hit, it's actually a very strong tool as well because it gives you instant access to limited entry, like I said earlier, by holding down. And in hit, your LE gets enhanced, so it's like a quick access to LE mix-ups. Down back 1-3, a very decent low, your go-to low as a Lars player. I have talked about full crouch down 1+2 like so much in the video, but now let's talk about the low itself. This, in my opinion, is Lars's best low whilst in neutral because it's only -12 on block, so basically they only get outstanding 4 or like a very small punish, and it gets, you know, characters like Dragonov. It does 24 damage on hit. 24 damage for a low is just stupid. 24 damage is a lot, right? So it's not very risky, and the tracking is actually decent, right? It's very, very decent because you have to go into full crouch, and that tends to rely on yourself with your opponent most of the times. But it's still susceptible to sidestep right, just like all of Lars's lows. So this move is only +1 on hit and leaves you standing. And like everything else we've talked about in the video, that's +1 on hit that leaves you standing. 1-1-1 is always a perfect follow-up, right? Jabs or 2-1 as well. It's a perfect frame trap. Full crouch, down forward, down 1+2 into 1-1-1. If I try to sidestep you, use your homing moves, back 1+2. If start respecting you, it gives you the opportunity to continue your offense. So you can go for like a DE3, DE mix-ups, running 3s, just continue your offense after that, right? For 1+2, let your mind run free. And there's no one particular way you want to use this low. You can just like run up, crouch, crouch, go into crouch and do the low. Think of the way low players use their instant slide. It's kind of the same, except you have to be in your opponent's face. So some creative ways that I love using this low is after like an SE at a DE cancel, so like forward 3 and then cancel into full crouch down 1+2. It's also very good after Oki, right? After a knockdown, dash up, crouch, one down 1+2, dash up, crouch, down 1+2. It's very, very good in that sense. It's also good using it with tools that leave you in crouch. We've already spoken about this, right? Down 2 leaves you in crouch, down back 1 leaves you in crouch. Any AoE cancel, you can cancel into crouch. So moves like that just force you into crouch, you can just throw out that low, as simple as that. Okay, so now let's talk about Lars' dynamic entry 2, starting with dynamic entry 1. So dynamic entry in general is mostly used to initiate pressure. If you've noticed, almost everything he has from DE gives him plus frames. DE3 +5, DE3 +4 into SE is like +4, DE4 is +1, DE1, which we'll talk about right now, is +1 on block. So it's a very good tool to just get in and initiate pressure. So like I said, DE1 is +1 on blocks. It's like a mid-screen jab, right? Think of that 1.5 range I talked about earlier. Lars is very strong at controlling this space and this range, so it's a very good setup for 1-1-1 like we spoke about earlier, a very good frame trap for 1-1-1, a good frame trap for 2-1 as well. If they start respecting you, it gives you the opportunity to get in. You can cancel DE1 into SE by holding forward and going for SE mix-ups. He also has DE1-2. Now DE1-2 takes you into, it's a hit engager, right? Natural combo on hit, right? The whole string hits. It's also jails on block as well, meaning if the first hit is blocked, they have to block the last hit as well. They cannot duck the whole thing. The fourth string though is double high. So if your opponent makes a read on you and just ducks, then you will get launched, you will get punished. However, Lars has the Godlike DE3. And I'm going to talk about these moves together because they are both used at the same range and it's kind of like a mix-up between the two. So you can do like DE3 as a mix-up for DE1-2. And DE3 is brained. Like, I love Lars, I love this character, he's my boy, but like guys, let's be honest, DE3 is a ridiculous move. But we're eating well with Lars main, so we're going to eat this. So it's +5 on block and it takes you into SE. You are forced to go into SE, but you can just cancel it with back if you don't want to commit. So DE3 into SE1 is a frame trap. They don't have any other option but to guess. I think they can power crash out of this or hit burst, but overall they just have to guess, right? In SE as well is a mix-up stance. He has a mid from this which launches, he has safe mids, and he has a low as well. I'll talk about SE after DE. So that's kind of the mix-up game you have between DE1 and DE3. The only way to counter DE3 is to float Lars out of the animation. So you can like jab counter Lars to float him out of DE3 and like get a full combo off of that. However, he can mix it up with DE1. And that's the whole purpose between DE1 and DE3. So they have to guess whether he's coming in with DE1, right? And either he's coming in with DE3. If they do DE1, they do it a little bit too late, a little bit too early, they will get clipped by DE1-2, boom, and you go into hit for a guaranteed mix-up. So it's very difficult to deal with Lars at this range. And remember, he also has forward for 1+2 that controls the same space. So like just get in for free with DE. That's one thing that makes dynamic entry very, very strong with Lars. You can just like go in, boom, DE1 poke, DE1 poke, DE1, boom, DE1-2, go into hit. Okay, you're ducking now, DE3. Hold this plus frame, boom, into SE1 for 50-50 mix-up or guaranteed frame trap, right? So yeah, it's very, very strong, guys. Very, very like basic 101 Lars DE1. Throw out your DE1s and DE3s in tandem. Now, I feel as though I've covered like so much on DE3. I don't really know what else to cover on this move, but I want to talk about how else it's useful apart from just like getting in and just throwing it out, because basically that's how you use this move. You just throw it out because it's that brained, it's that OP, it's that good. But it's very, very strong as an Okizeme option as well. After a knockdown into DE to DE3, it's strong in that sense. It's strong at the wall as well, right? For Okizeme at the wall, especially when you're in heat. You can do some really crazy stuff with DE3. Just to show you guys a few things. Also in heat as well, like I love using it in heat because it's an instant access to LE, right? It takes you into SE, so you cancel into LE, boom, you have a free mix-up. So basically, if they respect your DE3, right, and you cancel your DE3 into LE, they are guessing that mix-up. If they try to interrupt you, you have DE into SE1, which is a frame trap, right? You can just go for an instant mix-up into SE between the low and the mid as well. That's a very strong move, nothing too complicated on how you use this move. I've also touched on DE2 throughout the video as well, so I won't really dive deep into this move. So it's a safe mid counter hit string, but you won't really use it in a sense that you would use forward 1+2, because this one is just too slow. It comes out too slow and you have to go into DE2 as well. The tracking is not that great, honestly, and you can be interrupted most of the times because it's too slow, right? So don't really use it like a fisher. What makes this move good, first of all, is the fact that it hits opponents on the ground. So your Hwarang back 3, your Devojin back 4, your Kazuya forward 4. This is Lars's version. Lars has DE2 for his ground hitting move. And due to this fact, he does have some really good Okizeme tools, and this is where this move shines. So this is your get off the ground move, as well as a good Okizeme setup tool at the wall as well, like we talked about in heat. If the opponent stays on the ground, get them off the ground with DE2. But overall, you won't really use that move in any other sense. Of course, you use it after forward 4 like we spoke about earlier, because it is a frame top after that move. It does launch on counter hit after all. So yeah, maybe once in a while we can throw it out, but overall you're better off using forward 1+2 in the neutral. It's faster. Okay, now let's get into the dynamic entry lows, the DE lows, and this is where Lars's lows start to get good. I've stressed throughout the video about how Lars is a risky character in neutral when it comes to his lows. Almost all his lows in neutral are launch punishable. However, when Lars goes into stance, that risk is heavily reduced. He gets some really good lows that are actually not that risky on block. So let's talk about DE3+4. So DE3+4 is his old stomp that he had back in Tekken Tag 2, Tekken 6 and Tekken 7. So now this slow is best used as an Okizeme option, right? It doesn't really have that good range, so you won't throw it out in neutral like that. I think I'm getting way ahead of myself. Let's talk about the frame data first. So the move is only -3 if you don't transition into silent entry. You can transition into silent entry by holding forward. If you hold forward, it becomes +4. However, if you don't go into stance, it's only -14 on block, right? So it won't be launch punishable, only against certain characters like Jin that can launch -14 moves. But if you go into stance on block, it is launch punishable, and on counter hit, it gives you a guaranteed SE1. So it does have some risk to it. This one depends on the reads as well, right? Whether you decide to commit to the stance and go into SE, putting yourself at risk of getting launched, or just doing 3+4 on its own and backing away. So like I said, it's only -3 on hit, so don't really get to do much off of this, but because of the distance that it has, you can like work around it as well. You can like sidestep, right, throw out a one jab and just see what the opponent does after you throw out this move. So as I was saying earlier, you don't really just throw it out in neutral like that. You have to use it as an Okizeme option. What I mean by this is after a knockdown. Because like the range is pretty bad, guys, right? If your opponent is very good at backdashing, you'll find yourself whiffing this move more so than often. And the fact that Lars is always in stance, you're always going to be transitioning with this character. So every time you're in DE, try by all means to throw out that 3+4. Remember, he does have DE3, right, which is a very annoying move. People don't want to duck and get hit by that move, so this slow actually lands more so than you'd think, right? But again, it's about the reads and it's about the distance. I love using this move at the wall. Like at the wall, that's where it's at. That's where this move is at, because on counter, like I said again, it can take you into hit from SE1, giving you a worse plat as well. So mind the range. A very strong player that has very good movement, backdash in general, will catch you slacking in neutral, because the range is very deceptive and it's a bit slow, right? It comes out at 22 frames, so it does have an animation you can react to at times. I'm not saying 22 frames is reactable, but like most of the time people do react to it because of the DE animation, the forward 3 animation first. Very strong move, one of his best lows for sure. At the wall, guys, please try to abuse this at the wall. Just a mix up between DE3 and DE3+4 is enough to get people ducking. A very, very strong low. Dynamic entry 4 is another of Lars's lows from DE, and this is also another great low. And unlike DE3+4, this one you can just throw out in neutral. Right, it's really good in that sense because although it's 1 frame slower than DE3+4, it does have more range, right? It has more range, making it more practical to use in neutral. It's only -12 on block, which is very, very good, and it's +1 on hit. So +1, what comes to mind? Of course, 1 1 1 frame traps, 1 1 1 follow-ups, 2 1 frame traps, 2 1 follow-ups. So it's like a good low poke, just a good low check. And the good thing about DE4 is you can cancel it into LE by holding down, right? That's right, you can cancel it to limited entry by holding down. So it gives you instant access to LE by holding down at +1. And remember when we talked about down back 1-3, how if the opponent jabs after down back 1-3, all the LE options will go right under the jabs. This applies to DE4 as well. So like DE4 into LE, either the low or the mid. If they jab, both options will lose. If they do down forward 1, however, it will counter both options, but to counter their down forward 1, you have to cancel your LE into our standing 4. So the same thing I said about down back 1-3 still applies to DE4 as well. It's a very strong low in that sense, especially in hit. So it's good, just like DE3+4 as a knockdown low as well, an Okizeme low. You can get it after like forward 1+2 into DE4 as well. You know, forward 2 for knockdown into DE4. It's just very good overall, just a very good low check. Nothing too complicated, nothing too overcomplicated about this low. Now let's get into his silent entry stance, or his SE stance, which is his huge mix-up stance. So if you guys noticed, Lars does not have a launcher in dynamic entry stance. However, he does have a launcher in silent entry, and he also has a very strong low in silent entry as well, therefore making this stance a 50-50 mix-up, right? So you can go into silent entry by pressing forward after dynamic entry. So every stance can cancel into each other. DE can go into SE, SE can go into LE. So let's start with the mid, right? SE2, and I'll kind of speed run this session because it's a very, very obvious thing to know, right? Like it's just a mix-up stance. You enforce mix-ups on your opponent when you go into this stance. So SE1 is a safe mid which takes you into hit, has some good pushback. It's a very, very good setup for like arc blast if they start mashing buttons afterwards. Very, very strong. Just straightforward move, takes you into hit, nothing too serious, nothing too personal about this. Then he has SE2, which is a low. Now this low is amazing. It's a counter hit launcher as well, and it's only -12 on block, right? And it high crashes as well. It goes under jabs, goes under electrics. So this is the mix-up you have in this stance. So like a safe version of the mix-ups is either SE1 or SE2. You can also just get in raw with the stance. Basically at full screen, just go into dynamic entry, then silent entry, then either go low or either go mid. Because remember, you can just go like DE1 or DE3, right? So your opponent has to like readjust, and sometimes you become hesitant to press buttons after you go into DE. So you can go like DE, instead of going to either DE1 or DE3, just cancel into LE, then throw out a raw SE2, a raw SE1 as well. You also have dynamic silent entry 3, which is a mid launcher. It's -14 though, so characters like Brian, Paul Phoenix can launch this move, but this should be used kind of like a hard read and just force your opponent to not duck when you're in silent entry, guys, because everyone expects you to do silent entry too, right? Because it's kind of reactable in a sense. But if you like delay the mix-up and just go for an SE3 sometimes and force them to stop ducking, bro, that will just enforce your mix-up potential in the stance. And like, dude, like it's so annoying to deal with, right? DE3 into SE, DE3 into SE, either mid, low, you're ducking, boom, SE4. Sorry, SE3, get launched. It is so annoying. So like, yeah, SE3 is like a big launcher that you can risk to do against characters that don't really have 14 frame punishers, but like overall, very, very strong. And lastly, he has SE3+4. Now SE3+4 is basically Lars's down 2. So please go back to the down 2 section. Whatever I said about down 2 applies to SE3+4 as well. It's 0 on block, meaning you can do the exact same things you can do with down 2, except SE3+4 does not leave you in the crouch. It will always leave you standing, unlike down 2. And he also has SE1+2, but this one is just a screw, so I want you to talk about it. So that's basically how his silent entry works as a mix-up stance. Like I said, just a speed run on this because it's just an easy thing to understand. You go into SE, you want to make your opponent guess. It's good to delay the mix-up sometimes, just to throw the opponent's timing off. Sometimes just cancel out of SE and go into LE instead to enforce another mix-up. It's like a mix-up on a mix-up on a mix-up, especially in heat. Really strong. Okay, and lastly I want to briefly talk about Lars's hit. Now please keep in mind I have done a separate full hit guide for Lars, so please check it out. I'll leave the link in the description below this video, but just a brief explanation on how Lars's hit works and how best you should utilize it. Firstly, like we spoke about earlier throughout the video, limited entry gets enhanced whilst in hit, so his lows do so much more damage and they get like a knockdown. The low becomes a very strong knockdown low, basically a health that does 35 damage and is only -2, so it's not even launch punishable when you block it. That's ridiculous. Then the mid becomes an instant screw launcher, right? Safe instant screw launcher on block. So if you have a maximum hit gauge, you can only use this 3 times. So that's one way in which Lars's hit works. So you want to make the best out of these situations. We've talked about all these transitions into LE, right? Dynamic entry 4, hold down takes you into LE, down back 1 3, hold down takes you into LE. You can cancel from SE into SE by holding down, so like SE3, DE3 cancel into SE, then go for the LE mix-ups, right? So it's all about being creative and finding ways to go into LE to enforce these mix-ups whilst in hit using Lars. This is what makes his hit very scary, very scary. This man will cancel in your face and you won't do shit, right? So it's a very strong hit mechanic, or at least one aspect of how his hit mechanic works. Secondly, Lars gets an armored shoulder that's like super plus on block. It's +5 at close range, so basically think of Lars's DE3, except it's faster and it has armor, right? So the way his DE3 works is the same way his shoulder works, except it has armor. And it takes away a chunk of his hit gauge as well. You can only use this 3 times, just like the LE mix-up. So you must be very careful on how you use it. You just basically go in and enforce an SE mix-up. So it takes you into SE immediately, right? This is the only move that Lars has that takes you into SE on plus, apart from DE3. So you can want to enforce an SE mix-ups, and the shoulder is that option for you. But like I said, you can also cancel the SE into LE. But what Lars players love doing is shoulder and then cancel into SE, then go for an LE mix-up. You don't want to do that because it wastes so much of your hit gauge, right? Try to either choose. If you use the shoulder and go into SE, don't burn your hit gauge a second time. You've already taken up 1 hit gauge, why take up another, right? Just go for a no mix-up, either the mid or the low. That's basically how Lars hit mechanic works in a brief summary, really fast. I know I have covered this already, guys, so please check out my hit guide. Very important if you're a die-hard Lars main. So there you have it, guys, a guide on Lars' most important tools and some tips revolving around how you use them in general. Now I might have missed so many other tools like his orbital, his back 1+2. Sadly, I don't want my guides to be very long. I don't want them to be over an hour, and this is just over an hour. So maybe I'll make another guide, but like overall, you just want to use your homing moves with Lars. I should have added a section for this because this character is very linear. So back 1+2, please use your homing moves as well. So any feedback is welcome, guys. How can I make these guides better for you? What can I do to improve your experience on my channel? So thank you so much as always, and please check out my other Lars content as well. GG.